extent of potency to act. And quantum states definitely reduce potency to act. Like you can talk about the quantum entanglement, for example.
That's what I was just going to say. We can explain this through superposition. Everything already is actualized. All possible states already are actualized.
No, that's not even, so in quantum entanglement, my understanding of it is when you have a particle in one specific coordinate, and this particle changes, whether it's perceptual or not, the other particle that is in some way connected to it, I don't know, by whatever interpretation you take from that, is also changing. But that change also presupposes a notion of potency. You can't explain that change without any motion whatsoever. If there's no motion, there'd be no change.
In entanglement, there's no change actually happening. In entanglement, they're actually the same objects. They share the same wave functions. So yeah, entanglement has nothing to do with that. I was talking about superposition. Do you know what that means?
Yeah. So for the quantum entanglement,
what's superposition?
Sorry, I just wanted to get back to what you said before.
You don't know what it is? You don't know what it is?
I just wanted to get back to what you said before.
It's okay. Look, it's okay if you don't know what it is. Just tell me. Do you know what superposition means?
You don't. Okay, so the what was I going to say? So the quantum entanglement of the two particles, as I was going to explain again, as Arvin Ash gives his own interpretation of it. Yes, there's no change. And the reason why I want to stick on this point is because if I move to another point, I'm not going to be able to state my argument. So the reason why I don't think what you're saying is correct is because even if you don't say there's no change in the particle, which to me is ridiculous because there's obviously a change in the angular momentum of the particle. But even if you say that there's no change in the particle, there's still going to be a change in the field. So Arvin Ash in a YouTube video, I think like 2 years ago. Okay, so if there's no change in the field,
that assumes one quantum interpretation. There are many others.
Yeah, I know.
Every interpretation does not suppose that there are changes in the function. The wave function never collapses at all, and all possible states exist in the superposition, meaning that they're all actualized.
Yeah. So when you said note this, you're already presupposing your interpretation. So I said that you can take Arvin Ash's interpretation. You know physics, so I'm pretty sure you know who that is. He's a very popular YouTuber. Yeah. He takes the idea that the space-time, I think he's trying to say that the quantum field at some coordinate of the quantum field changes so that the angular momentum of one particle changes at the change of the other particle because they're connected to that field. So when you say no, as if it's a fact, you're just saying no because I take this interpretation.
That's one interpretation. Again, we don't have to hold to any particular interpretation, especially not yours.
Then I don't have to agree with you.
The point is that we can logically posit a notion of a universe in which it doesn't fundamentally change. Period. You never have to assert a God.
Yeah, so now I'm going to ask you, in that quantum entanglement, when the other particle's angular momentum shifts to a different state, how are you going to explain that if it never actually changed?
Superposition. Do you know? That's why I asked you what it means. You don't know what it means.
Okay, so what's your notion of superposition again? Because my understanding of superposition doesn't deny change.
Okay, do you know what superposition means?
Quantum superposition. Well, I don't know the strict definition of it. I just have a vague understanding. I can't lie to you. So can you tell me?
Well, thanks for being honest, at least. So when a particular particle or quantum state embodies all possible states at one time, simultaneously, right? It shares multiple states at one time.
And what did you say? Sorry? What did you say? Wait, what did you say again?
It's a quantum state which embodies all possible quantum states at one time simultaneously, right? So, for example, a particle could exist in multiple states at one time. Upstate, downstate, simultaneously. It's a phasing probability. It's a probability cloud. And that's exactly what quantum mechanics implies.
What's the name of the quantum physicist that brought that up? The cat guy. What's his name, sorry? Can you remind me?
Schrodinger?
Yes, Schrodinger. Okay, you're talking about that. Yeah, but how does this deny change? Sorry. You're trying to say that everything's in a superposition?
Because everything already exists. All possible states already exist. They're embodied by this singular quantum state for perhaps the entire universe. The entire universe could have a single quantum state which embodies everything else and everything already is. Everything that exists is actualized. There is no potentiality to actuality. It's already actualized.
But even if you say on a quantum level that that all these particles in a superposition or whatever, I really don't see how this denies any actualization of potency. You could still say that the cat is because when at first when you said superposition, there's different understandings of that interpretation of
Yeah.
what the quantum
Schrodinger,
superposition
yes.
is.
Schrodinger,
But
all Schrodinger did was assign a probability, a wave probability
a
statement.
wave probability function to to a
That's all
phenomenon.
he did. He did not talk about all the other interpretations, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
several different quantum mechanical interpretations which allow for things to not have any change occur necessarily, right? Change being emergent. This would be
yeah,
Everett's interpretation, where the wave
yeah.
function never
Whatever.
collapses.
Yeah.
The wave function never changes under the Everett's interpretation. Do you understand what
Yeah,
that means?
when the wave, okay, so let's go back because you're kind of flooding my head with information. Sorry, it's 5 a.m. over here as well. When the wave, yeah, so if you say that every particle in the quantum system, right, has, what would you say, a superposition, and that transcends to the fundamental molecular level of everything that exists in the universe. And everything that exists in the universe has a quantum superposition, and it's just probabilistic and it's just random. Then we would have no way to explain why things that occur on a fundamental level is not random, but in the particles, it is random. Whereas we would just say, the Thomists or the Aristotelians, that even on the quantum level, the particles have a teleology in which is actualized by some potency that was not rendered to it. So just because your interpretation, I mean, like you have a different interpretation, but I think my interpretation matches more with the fundamental status of the universe.
No, because you're postulating something that is not required for quantum mechanics to hold. Again, there are certain interpretations where there is no potentiality to actuality. Again, I don't think you understand quite what superposition means.
Yeah, no,
Wave
but in
function,
epistem,
the wave function
go
never
on, sorry.
changes. Like the wave function never changes under the Everest interpretation. All possible states already exist, and
Yeah, so that's one interpretation.
yes. So do
Sorry.
you agree that it's valid?
Uh, I don't think it's as valid as my interpretation, but sorry, in
There's no
epistem,
such thing as more valid or less valid. It's either valid or not, right? So
I disagree. I think something can be more valid than something else, but sorry, I want to say something. I'm not trying to be rude as well. I was going to say
I think
something.
you're talking about. I think you're talking about soundness. Soundness can vary in degree, but not
It says
validity.
soundness.
Yeah, soundness can vary in degrees.
Oh yeah. I was just gonna bring that up. So yeah, in epistemology, there's different like advantages that you can take. You could take parsimony. You could take explanation. And I think we have more like explanatory power to the fundamental status of things that exist in the universe. Like for example, I don't know why anything that occurs here is not random, but on a quantum level, you'd want to say that it's random. Whereas I could say that on a quantum level, like it, there's this end that the particles exist for, which is actualized by its potency by some other contingent factors.
Well, so
And then me and you are
first of
just
all,
going to
when you say
disagree on
hold on,
interpretation.
when you say randomness, quantum mechanics does not necessarily entail that it's random.
But some interpretations take
There
that view,
could
of
be a
course. Yeah.
deterministic nature to quantum behaviors. So I don't know why you're invoking this randomness thing, right? I
So we're talking
also
about.
don't see where theism grants you any more explanatory power over naturalism.
We're not talking about. So we're not even talking about theism. We're just talking about the interpretation of this very quantum phenomenon. So yeah, when you said, sorry, you said something. Yeah, I'm just talking about different interpretations. So I didn't say you have to think it's random. But obviously, if you think that the superposition is literally like everything that exists in the universe right now is just like in a superposition where things can be actualized for no reason, right? So there's no inherent potency in anything. Well, then it would definitely entail randomness, because if there is some explanation as to why this happens over this, then there has to be some metaphysical explanation. That metaphysical explanation will be
Yeah,
accounted for its potency.
look. We could say that there's a deterministic reason as to why certain particles exist in certain ways. We
So
don't
then
have to
there's a
resort to just pure
deterministic.
randomness.
Okay, sorry. So there's a deterministic reason on a fundamental level between me and you, but there's just like an indeterministic reason in the particle level.
Yeah, you can say that. I don't. I think everything is determined. I think hard determinism is true, but I don't see why there's an issue with that either.
Okay, so let's go with what you think, because I think that there's an issue with that. I wouldn't want to separate two like metaphysical levels for literally no reason. Makes no sense. Why would the particles be indeterminate and then me and you and everything is determinate? That makes no sense. But I think your view kind of makes a bit more sense than that view. So your view is that even the particles at a superpositional level is determined, correct? Like the angular momentum.
I personally think that everything's determined, but this is not even relevant to this topic. But sure, go ahead. What's your point?
I would say it's a bit relevant to the topic because if the angular momentum of these quantum particles are determined to shift position from X to Y, then that wouldn't negate my notion of potency, because you could just say that that motion is determined. So there's really no argument against my position.
Well, there is, because you're question begging there. You're question begging the notion of movement through time in these particles. When again, what undermines all this would be the B theory, which quantum mechanics is perfectly compatible with the B theory, which there is no motion of particles through time. Particles don't even exist on the quantum level, right? We're talking about fields. We don't even talk about particles. So, and these fields again would all be embodied by a singular quantum state, and in that sense, it is unchanging and eternal and necessary. So, it would not necessarily an objection to your view, but both of us are at a standstill, right? You just posit one extra thing than mine. I would argue that yours is less parsimonious, but there's nothing invalid about this position I'm holding.
So when you say that mine is less parsimonious, I've already explained how you can account for a reason why these particles in the quantum level change from one particular coordinate system to another particular coordinate system, under my view. Whereas like an indeterminate view.
Why do you keep saying that? They're not changing. Why do you keep saying that? They're not changing.
Because the angular momentum of another particle obviously changes its position. The change for me is just...
That would be perceptual. Like, that would be still perceptual, right? You're still not recognizing the difference.
But
perceptual change in the fundamental.
Sorry, is it perceptual in your view? Because you just said you was a determinist.
Yeah, perceptions can still exist deterministically.
Yeah, but what? So you're saying that the motion of everything in the world is determined, but it's still just perceptual. So it's only perceptually determined then.
Well, when we say perceptual, I mean relative, right? Everything in the universe, nothing in the universe necessarily has to move. Nothing's moving. In fact, everything in relativity is moving at the same constant rate throughout the universe. What we perceive as motion is just changes in our geodesics, changes in our trajectory.
Sorry, in your, sorry to cut you off, in your view of time, what would the present be?
The present is just one coordinate of the universe.
If the present is one, is the president, so sorry, I said the president. Sorry, it's 5 a.m. over here, but if the present is just one coordinate of the universe, is that coordinate indivisible? Because when I say the present, I mean like the now.
Yeah, again, you can slice up now moments as slices in this larger universe. And under B theory, we can look at the 4D block model where everything already exists, all time exists, and each present moment is a slice of that larger structure, four-dimensionally. So
I wouldn't see how you can slice up something that's indivisible. Like when I think of now.
Well, it's just mathematical. It's just a mathematical analogy, right? I'm not saying that time is a physical thing.
Oh no, I agree with you, obviously.
Okay, great. So
I would say
what's
that
your connection?
time is is the continuum of the visible parts. But like when I say the visible, even like conceptually or like logically, I would say that now is still like indivisible. When I say now, you can't slice it into before, after. And in your theory of time, now would be stretched
Now
towards,
depends. Look, my now moment could be different than somebody else's now moment, and this is demonstrated by relativity. We can do you know what time dilation is?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I know. So your
everybody's now
now
moment is
moment,
different. That's why our now moment is completely perceptual, and it changes based on your velocity through space, based on your gravity fields. It
I
all
know, but
depends on your coordinates. That's what gives us
we're talking about
now.
like we talk about the fundamental notion. We're talking about the fundamental notion of time. We're not just talking about like the
Right.
relative or
Yeah.
like
In
the
my view,
conceptual
time is
notion
just
of
another
time.
dimension. Time, in my view, is just another dimension of the universe. It's four dimensional. But
Yeah, that's not just your view. That's the common physical view.
okay.
Time being four dimensional and breaking down in the third dimension into different simultaneous parts. But the reason why I don't really subscribe to B theories because if the present, the now is fundamentally indivisible, not just like relatively indivisible. Something can't be relatively indivisible. You can perceive time to be indifferent. Like, here's my thing with
No,
physicists, right?
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
Relativity is not the full picture, right?
yeah,
There could be a more fundamental phenomenon that explains this, perhaps quantum mechanically. There's a
yeah,
holographic principle too, which also could fit into this picture, where
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a lower dimensional reality that kind of like holographically gives us the sense of time. And there's just really crazy things, but the point is that there's nothing under your view that does any better job than naturalism, and this is really all I care about, right?
I think the reason why I'm arguing against this is because you reject my view of motion, and I think it's just very obvious to
I don't reject it.
yeah,
I'm not necessarily rejecting it. I'm just saying we don't have to accept it. We don't have to accept that. I mean, there could be atheists who accept your view, but I just don't have to.
yeah. Okay, so maybe I should give you an argument as to why you would want to accept acting potency. Then I like the conversation that we're having. I'm not really a physicist type of guy, but yeah, I like the conversation we're having. According to me, in my view, like when I study being, there's two ways that being can go. So it can go being is limited. It's going to be limited by two things. It's going to be limited by its existence. It's going to have its existence, sorry. And its existence is going to be limited by some positive ontological principle. That ontological principle cannot come from itself because it's its negation, the same way that darkness cannot come from light. And it cannot come from non-being because non-being is nothing. So that positive
Yeah,
principle is
this
what
is where I'm losing, and
argues.
this is where this is getting ridiculous.
Why this
Nothingness,
is ridiculous.
existence. These are really these are ambiguous terms. They're very ill defined.
It's called
Nothing
metaphysics.
is a
Full
true
stop.
concept.
Okay, so in metaphysics, we study how being and existence works in their relation to objects. So I'm just talking to you about the
Yeah, but
fundamental
this is where
nature
you
of the
start getting into
finite.
the philosophy part of it, and now you're losing the scientific aspect of it, right?
I never came here to
You're
argue
no longer being
science.
grounded in the scientific realm. Okay, great. So then, if you're going to make scientific claims about like existence, well, that requires some scientific
Metaphysics,
evidence.
sorry, metaphysics is a science. So like metaphysics is the
No, it's a
fundamental.
philosophy. It's philosophical.
Metaphysics is a science. So Aristotle defines science as a different perspective in how you can infuse knowledge into the intellect. So there's different types of sciences. Even politics is a science, according to Aristotle. I'm an Aristotelian. I came up here to talk about
Yeah, I just don't
philosophy.
agree with that definition. That's all. But look, this is just semantics. Like
Yeah, yeah.
my main point is there's nothing under theism that grants God any more credence
We're not talking
at
about
all.
theism. Okay, so we're not talking about theism.
Okay, well,
I'm talking about
that's really what I care about. Like, I mean, this is great. I like the conversation, but it's not going anywhere because all I
look
care
before
about is what's the truth.
look before I
What
get
gets us more likely to that God's true.
before I get to the nature of God, you have to agree with my fundamental metaphysical understanding of some particular things. I can't just say, yo, God exists here.
I
And at
understand
first,
that.
you're
I
talking about,
understand that, but I'm still not. I don't agree with your definitions of nothing. I don't think nothingness is a
on,
coherent concept. I don't think existence is coherent either. We don't have a good definition for it.
I would disagree with that. But on the second part, what I wanted to say before is, I never came here to argue physics with you. So you brought it into the realm of physics, and I had to go with you on that. So when you said I lost the physics, I never argued with physics with you. Now I'm talking about I'm a metaphysician. That's my field, and I study metaphysics. And we're talking about the fundamental nature of a finite being. And you still haven't really like rebutted my point. So when you say that you don't have a good reason to answer my to accept my critique, you're not really like rebutting my critique. So you don't have a reason at all to reject or accept it. So there's no point, because I just gave you what I think the finite being is, the nature of a finite being, and you haven't told me, oh, you're wrong here, you're wrong here. So I don't really see a
Well, when
point.
you say limited, when you say these very ambiguous words like limited, what do you mean by limit? Limited by what? Right? There's clearly a
Limited by,
reference frame. When you say something's limited, limited relative to what? Right?
so
And that's the
yeah,
key contention.
I just said what it's limited by. So I said it's limited by some positive ontological principle. Ontology just means being. So
Yeah.
that positive ontological principle is going to be its potency. That's what I said. The reason why it's going to be its
And
potency.
that's where I disagree. This is where we disagree. Right? Potency
Yeah. So why do
versus actuality. I don't see why there has to be this dichotomy. I think that it's a false
yeah.
dichotomy.
Okay. So I just told you why you would have this potency principle, because the limitation of that finite being cannot come from the being itself, because limitations is the being's negation. The same way that darkness cannot come from light, and it cannot come from nothing or non-being. So it has to come from some other positive
I think
principle.
you're just question. I just see you're question begging the first way. I think that's all you're doing. You're
I'm really
assuming that the
just,
first way holds, right? You think you're just assuming that for the sake of the argument.
I don't really think
I don't have to. Look,
you're not,
you understand that I could hold a view that everything's actualized, and I don't need to hold to this potency thing. You understand?
okay, okay, sorry. I want to get something straight, sorry. I can't be question begging the first way, because this that I'm talking about is what I need you to accept in order for you to accept the first way. So I'm not question begging the first way.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
trying to explain to you or prove to you a metaphysical principle that has been founded 2,000 years ago by Aristotle. And all I want to explain to you is the nature of a finite being. Now, if you say that everything that exists in the world would be fully actualized, you wouldn't be critiquing my notion of finite being, because everything that exists in the world is obviously finite. So you have to critique why I cannot accept this potency principle in a finite being by explaining to me how something can have restrictions, and that restriction would not be its potency. Because if you say everything is actualized, you're just restating that you think everything is finite. And then you're just not really attacking my argument at that point. That's the problem that I have.
Yeah, I don't see why.
Yeah.
I don't see why we have to, accept this potency thing.
Yeah. So can you explain why?
You can try one more time. But I'm getting tired, brother. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Everything that exists in the universe is finite. And because it is finite, finite things are restricted in their nature by some positive I'm trying to make it some positive principle. So like something that really exists positively and is a principle of something, some source. The source cannot come from itself because it's its negation, it's its opposite. The same way that darkness cannot come from light. And it cannot come from non-being or nothingness. So it has to come from some other positive principle, which is not itself. And that
Well,
principle
yeah,
is what actually calls potency.
we can just say like the universe. We can describe the universe as being the source. and the universe as being some kind of like quantum state, which grounds all other emergent phenomenon from it. So
Well, then you
you don't have
just
to posit
agree with
that.
me. You would just agree with me that
Yeah, for the
that
sake, well, for the sake of, we can grant you that premise for the sake of the argument, and I can say I can posit some natural entity that explains it just as fine.
yeah, well, that's calm. But you just agree with my notion of motion. Then
I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't. I'm just saying if we wanted to grant you
I'm
that
not
premise,
saying that
we could
the
posit some natural phenomenon that explains it just as well.
yeah,
But
but
yeah,
the no one. I'm not saying
I
that the
don't even, I
potency.
don't agree with you. I still don't agree with you about this potency thing. I think that everything
Sorry,
already is actualized, and you have not refuted that.
why did you say that the source of the potency comes from the universe if you don't agree that there's potency in things? What?
I said we can just say that, right?
So
We
what
could
are you
say that.
saying? You,
We can. There's different interpretations that we can have about this.
but what's
I could
yours?
say that the potency is grounded in the universe. I could also say that everything is actualized, grounded by the universe.
You wouldn't be attacking my argument. So wait, what's yours again? Are you saying to me right now with the argument that I presented to you that the universe is the source of this potency, or are you like just you know?
Again, I don't think you listened to what I told you. Right?
I know. I just want you to like
Everything
give
would
your
be.
opinion.
Look, we can view the universe as one entity, and it would be
Yeah.
the quantum state in which everything's actualized. Right? It's just one entity, one structure. That's one view. That's the particular view I hold. The other view, you're question begging. I think the this idea of potency. When
I can't.
we don't have to accept that. But even if we did accept it, we can just say that yeah, there's potency grounded by the universe.
I'm giving you like a deductive argument to show you how a finite being is necessarily composed of act and potency. And the reason why I did this is because when I give people the first way, they typically always disagree with the notion of act and potency. So I'm giving you the reason why finite beings is necessarily composed of act and potency. And if you say that everything in the universe is actualized, you're not really attacking my argument. You're just saying, oh, like I'm trying to show you that 1 + 1 is 2. Oh yeah, but 2 + 2 could be 4, but that does not attack. 2 + 2 could be 5, but that does not attack the reason why I think that 1 + 1 is 2. Can you attack why I
You're
think
not
1 + 1?
attacking my view either, right? So I don't see what
I'm here to prove something to you. So it's like,
you have an. All you're trying to do is steamroll your view. I am showing you no. There's other possibilities. You're just going no, no, no. Let me show you my view.
no, but you asked me to give you a proof. I gave you a proof of why I think that finite being is necessarily composed of act and potency.
You didn't give me
You have
proof
not
of
really,
anything. You didn't give me proof of anything.
there can be proof of anything.
No, I said you didn't give me proof of anything.
Oh, so a metaphysical proof is different from a scientific or physics.
I know that, sir. You still didn't give me any logical proof for what you asserted.
Okay, so why do you think that? That's exactly what I want to ask you. Because just to get one thing straight, Mike. If you say, oh, there's this other interpretation that I can go, that does not mean that my logical proof is not valid
I
logically.
agree.
So
But
okay,
just
so when you
because
said
you
I
have a
didn't,
valid point doesn't make it true. Doesn't make
wait,
it
but you
sound.
said I didn't. You said I didn't give you logical proof. So can you show me the logical flaw of my argument?
I'm saying even if you had a valid point, it wouldn't make you correct or sound.
Okay, so okay, I understand that,
Okay, great.
right?
So go
So
ahead.
you already
Go
so
ahead and demonstrate that your view is more correct
okay, so
than mine.
sorry, so you do agree that I gave a logical argument then?
No, I still don't think you did.
Okay, why? That's what I'm asking you.
Because you've simply made assertions about this potency thing, and you've inserted these weird definitions that I think are ill-defined about nothingness and existence, which
Okay,
I
what?
don't think we can even assess yet.
Okay, so that doesn't. No, okay, now that I've given you my argument, is there any definition or anything that you want to identify in the argument that you think is wrong, so I can explain to you, so we can get further in the conversation, so we can have a good convo?
Yeah, when you say there's a positive ontological status, what do you mean? What's the difference between positive and negative ontological status?
Positive would just be something that exists. Negative would be something that doesn't exist in this case.
Great, exactly. Now, what do you mean by something that does not exist?
Something that does not exist is something that does not have act outside of its causes. Something that exists has act outside of its causes and outside a state of nothingness, according
So
to us.
nothingness. So what's nothingness?
Nothingness would just be the absence of being.
Yeah, but the entire notion of absence requires a boundary.
Yeah, it requires a
It
logical.
requires a boundary. So
It requires a logical
something,
pattern.
right?
Yeah.
That can still be something.
So the reason why you cannot
I
define.
don't accept your definition of nothingness or negative ontological status.
Okay, so the reason why you cannot define nothing or you cannot define being is because it doesn't really exist in a genus. So when we define things, they exist in a genus. Like when I say man is a rational animal is a genus, it's a category. Nothing is not in a category. But when I say that nothing is the absence of, well, existence, well then I'm just saying that it's the absence of existence. Logically, that absence is logical. So when you say I'm putting in a category, it's only gonna
That to me is contradictory. How
Yeah, it's only gonna-
how can something that does not exist
something can exist.
coherently assessed? I don't
Sorry,
think it
just
can.
can you let me finish my point? So something can logically exist and not metaphysically or really exist. So for example, unicorns logically exist, but they don't really exist. Would you agree?
I think that they don't exist. When we say existence, do you mean in a logical world? Of course, they could exist in a logical world, but existing in a physical world or in reality, I don't think they do
don't.
exist.
Exactly my point. So nothing exists in the logical substrate, but doesn't exist in the metaphysical.
What do you mean by non-existent? This is the thing I don't understand.
Yeah, so I just said non-existence is something that has not yet been put into act outside of its causes. So the reason why you exist is because you've been put into act. Act means existence or perfection outside of your cause, which is your mom, for example, right? Now, a unicorn could logically exist in your brain, but let's just say you have Rick and Morty and they can spam your thoughts in reality, right? They just put the unicorn outside of its cause, which is your brain. That, for example, is going to give the unicorn existence. And so the whole point that I'm trying to make to you is that something can logically exist.
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't agree. I don't think
so why do you think?
I don't think the unicorn even exists. Period. Right.
So the unicorn doesn't even exist in your head.
No.
So you can't think or imagine of a unicorn.
No, what we imagine are. So when you say unicorn, you're talking about a specific being, which does not exist at all. Right? It doesn't exist logically. It's not coherent to talk about. Right?
It doesn't exist.
When I say not exist, I mean the colloquial way. I mean not logical. Yeah.
I would just disagree. I can obviously think of a unicorn in my head and know that it doesn't exist in my room. That's just obvious.
Right, but you're not thinking of a unicorn, right? You're not thinking of an actual unicorn. You're thinking of when you think your certain neurons are firing off. So you're not actually thinking of a unicorn. Your brain is igniting.
You have the conceptual notion of unicorn, right? You have the concept of unicorn. You know that it's a certain type of horse with one nasal on its forehead and
right.
whatever.
But that unicorn is just a conceptual description of some entity. It's
and we agree,
thing, right? Yeah,
we agree.
I'm trying to present some nuance here, right? Because
we agree, but
this is what you guys. This is what a lot of theists do. They love to exploit these nuances here.
Yeah, but that concept is still not going to exist in reality. It's just going to exist in the mind, and that's my whole point. That something can even if it's just a conceptual definition, something can logically exist and not metaphysically or really exist in reality. I can easily imagine a cop's just surfing.
I understand what you're trying to say, but I want to bring the nuance to the table because this is important. Because I still don't think nothingness is coherent, because every time you imagine nothingness, you can't. It's not possible. It's not logical. I think it's contradictory that you imagine something, which is something, and then nothingness. It's a contradictory statement to make that you can imagine. Because every time you imagine something, it's something. So I'm just trying to present some nuance here.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. So then again, you're just not really attacking my notion of logical existence or metaphysical existence. That's for one. For two, you can have the concept of something without imagining it. So this was Aristotle's argument for why the intellect cannot be reducible to the brain, because the brain has to do with the imaginations of phantasms, whereas the intellect takes concepts. So, for example, a chiliagon is a shape with 90 squared sides. You can't imagine that shape, but you can easily conceive the structure of the shape. You can easily conceive of a 90 square side shape, but you cannot imagine it, no matter how hard you go. So a concept is not always reducible to an imagination, and you can easily have the concept of a unicorn without really.
I think all thoughts are from the brain. I think that all concepts come from the brain.
Okay, that I think that true. I think
Aristotle, by the way, Aristotle got many things wrong. He was not very smart in many regards scientifically. I think Aristotelian physics is wrong, right? So Newton and Einstein destroyed Aristotelian physics. So
that's not
metaphysics.
Have you? Aristotle is one of the most strong-manned philosophers ever. Aristotle was definitely the smartest people that ever walked. One of the smartest people that ever walked the earth.
Well, smartest, relatively speaking, maybe, but not in today's world. He thought there was earth and wind and fire as elements. That's stupid. That's nonsense. He got lots of things wrong.
He thought of earth, but it depends on what you mean by elements.
He thought there were elements of earth and wind and fire. That's stupid. That's dumb.
That's how. Wait, hold up. He thought that earth, wind, and fire and air were natural elements in the world, just as Heraclitus and the other philosophers.
He thought that those elements made up everything in the universe, which isn't stupid.
No, Aristotle did not think that. He didn't think that. I've read Aristotle. I've read Aristotle's physics. He did not think that everything in the universe is made up of earth, water, fire, and that's ridiculous.
Are you sure about that?
Aristotle.
But
so
he got many other things incorrect about his metaphysics, but
Aristotle. No. Aristotle did not get anything incorrect metaphysically or principally speaking. He got some things incorrect physically or biologically speaking due to his lack of access.
That's why he was wrong. That's why you can't just accept anything he says, because he was wrong in many regards. Yes, he was.
Hold up. Aristotle was wrong in a lot.
Correct.
Wait, hold up. Aristotle was wrong in in quite a lot of stuff, but he was right in a lot of stuff. No one has ever done as much subjects as Aristotle. He did everything. He did economics, politics, poetry, philosophy, science, art. He did every single thing. So when you say Aristotle was wrong in a lot of stuff, it's because he was right in a lot of stuff. What are you talking
Congratulations,
about?
but that doesn't make him correct. Look, you keep appealing to authority.
Yeah, so
Aristotle thought this, right? All I'm trying to show you is that you can't say Aristotle thought this.
Hold up.
And
Aristotle,
you're correct.
Wait, hold up. Did you realize Einstein was wrong about some things, but why would I ever reject the general theory of relativity?
I never appealed to authority today. I never did that.
Hold up. But I told you, hold up, sorry. I literally just told you that Aristotle, this is Aristotle's idea, right? Critique my idea, and then you said Aristotle was wrong about a lot of stuff. Just because you're wrong about something does not mean
you've implied that because Aristotle believed it was correct. That's what you're implying here. So
why would I imply?
So then let's move on. If you agree with me, then let's move on then.
No, I just want you to
I want you to show me that that thoughts, that nothingness exists.
Yeah, nothingness.
You know what that means? Define nothingness.
Nothingness only. So nothingness only logically exists. So I just explained to you that you can explain the absence.
How do you logically describe nothingness?
Yeah, nothingness is just going to be the absence of some act that's placed outside of its cause, logically speaking.
An act that's outside of its cause?
Yeah, it's going to be the absence of any act or perfection outside of its cause.
Any act outside of its cause. And what's the absence of something?
The absence of something is going to be the non-presence, is going to be like the negation.
That's a tautology. Look, this is the problem. What do you mean by absence of something?
Yeah,
it requires a boundary.
It requires a logical.
And that boundary is something. So in your definition of nothing is included.
I haven't defined it. I just told you. Hold on. Okay. Definitions require conceptual categories or genuses. You cannot define nothing and you cannot define being because they don't have conceptual
categories. Well, then that is not coherent to me. Then why would we accept
hold up. Just because you cannot define something doesn't mean you can't have an idea or a sense of what or the quiddity of
You
that
can't do
thing.
both.
That is
You can't do
ridiculous.
either. You can't do either. You cannot conceive of
So
nothing.
because you
You
cannot
cannot
define
logically
something,
understand it. You cannot describe it.
okay, so wait, hold up. So you're saying just because you cannot define something, you cannot understand it?
No, what I'm saying is you cannot conceive of absolute nothingness. I don't think it's a logically coherent thing to even talk about. And that's why what you're describing is something to
I
me.
can
So
wait, hold up.
again, you're assuming there's an absence, but there's actually a presence of stuff. There's a presence of a
You
boundary.
can
Every time you say that there's an absence, you're invoking a boundary.
yeah, and you're really not critiquing what I just said. Something can
I am. You
logically
just don't want to
okay.
accept it for some reason.
Something can logically exist and not really exist. So when you keep saying I'm putting a logical category, I don't care because I've already conceded that something
That's
can
not
logically
what I'm
exist.
contending. That's not what I'm contending. What I'm saying is,
So
not does it not only does it not exist in reality, it doesn't exist logically.
sorry, what do you say?
What I'm saying is logically, it's incoherent to even talk about nothingness, let
So
alone
okay,
being
so
beyond.
what's the issue with saying that nothing is the absence or is the absence of any act that's placed outside of its cause? What's the issue with that?
What do you? Because absence is still ambiguous. The idea. What does absence
Absence.
mean?
Absence, the lack or the privation of any particular form or object. That's what absence is, the privation of something.
Okay.
And
I.
nothing is going to be the privation of being.
But in order to know a lack of something, you need a boundary to understand that lack. There's a lack in that area,
Yeah, but
in that
you need
understanding.
when you say boundary is going to be weird, you need a conceptual category on the being itself, not on the lack. So for example, blindness in man is a privation of man. So if you are blind, that's a privation in you. But in order for me to understand you're blind, it's not going to be on blindness itself, it's going to be on you. The same thing with nothing. In order for you to understand nothing, it's going to be based on being and existence itself, not on non-being. And that's all I'm telling you. And you're not really attacking what I said
No,
over and over again.
it's not.
Okay, go
It's
on.
not. It's dysanalogous. Because when you are understanding somebody being blind and it's privation of sight, the difference between that and nothingness is that we don't have a universe of nothing. We don't have a logical existence of nothingness.
No, that's not what I said. I said, okay, yeah. So in you,
We don't know what privation of nothing of something is.
okay,
We don't
so
know what that means. We
I
don't know
just
what
said that
privation of something is. That's not coherent to me.
I just said that nothing is the privation of anything that ontologically really exists.
Don't know what that means, right? When you say privation is something,
Okay,
that
so
implies something that necessitates and entails a boundary
oh
which
my
means something.
god. Well, how are you not really understanding what I'm saying? So a lack, right, is something. I agree with you. But a lack of being is only logically something, not metaphysically something. So nothing is the lack of being logically, not metaphysically. I've conceded to you that nothing can logically exist. But when I'm saying nothing, I'm talking about metaphysical existence. Please understand what I'm saying. Stop, just please understand what
Yeah,
I'm
it
saying.
still doesn't metaphysically still
How
doesn't.
does that not how does that not make sense? Yeah, it doesn't metaphysically exist, right?
No, it's not coherent metaphysically.
Yeah, I agree. It's not coherent metaphysically, but not on a logical scale.
If it's
You
if
can
it's
easily
incoherent, you can't talk about it. It's not coherent. It's a fallacious reason. It's fallacious.
something cannot exist metaphysically and exist logically. So I've explained to you how nothing can exist logically. Can you explain to me how that doesn't make sense? And then you're going to bring up, oh, but when you say nothing, you talk about metaphysics. Yeah, I'm just talking about logical, okay? Nothing can exist logically. Do you agree or do you disagree? If you
Well,
disagree,
I agree that there's certain definitions that when we colloquially use the word nothing, we're talking about privation of something, absolutely. But when we talk about nothingness, true absolute nothingness, that to me is inconsistent with reality. I don't think it's possible
yes, it's
metaphysically
not.
to have nothingness. And And that's
Yeah,
why I
we
reject your
agree.
premise that
We agree.
there's this dichotomy between
Wait, there's no
positive and negative ontological status. I think
wait, hold up. There's
there's
no
no difference.
sorry to interrupt you because you said something very important. You agree with me. So when you say nothing cannot exist metaphysically, that's the point. So the reason why something that exists, right, or like anything that's an act or anything that has existence, right? The reason why it cannot be limited by non-being or non-existence is because it doesn't exist metaphysically, as you just said. Which is what I'm trying to get you to
No,
understand.
I don't know what non-existence even metaphysically
Yeah.
means.
Okay. So whether you know it or not, you just said that it's coherent. It's not coherent with reality. So we don't even care about if you know it or not. You're a smart person, but
We can look
for this particular
when
problem,
you say nothingness, it makes no sense logically or
okay,
metaphysically.
you just agreed that nothingness does not metaphysically exist because that makes no sense, and we agree. So it cannot even
And
come
then you
from.
can't use the word and make it. It doesn't make sense. Then
Wait, hold up, hold
it's
up. For
fallacious.
anyone, wait, hold up. Just because something doesn't make sense to you does not mean, like, for example,
Not what
like,
I'm saying. It doesn't make any metaphysical or logical sense.
okay, oh my gosh, you're just getting back to the point.
It's
Okay,
incoherent.
let's just,
It's like
okay, okay, let's just say nothing doesn't make sense. Then it cannot come from like, okay, let's just say that nothing doesn't make sense, Mike. Okay. If nothing doesn't make sense, then it can't come from nothing because nothing doesn't make sense. So you agree with me. That's my point to you.
no, that's another fallacious reasoning. Now
Oh my
you're
God.
assuming that nothingness exists for it to not come from that. Do you understand the problem? This is
No,
exactly the problem with your view, right?
Mike, look, I am telling you,
When you say it
right?
can't come from that, it implies that that thing exists.
Look,
It doesn't, which
I'm
means
telling
that
you,
there's only one possibility, metaphysically speaking, and that's
okay,
existence. That's why
hold up.
non-existence doesn't make any metaphysical sense.
Okay, hold up. Something can be rendered logically or conceptually without being rendered metaphysically. I just told you that nothing is the absence of being, and that absence is understood in the abstract. It's not understood metaphysically. But even if you disagree, Mike, let's just say you disagree. If you disagree, that's fine. My point to you is that it can't come from that anyways because you disagree. You don't think it is, and I think it is. And it can't come from that anyways.
When you
It
say
can't
come from
come from
that,
its.
when you say come from that,
You're going to be like, what do you mean?
that's incoherent.
Okay, let's just scratch it out. Okay, let's just scratch it out. Let's just say that nothing doesn't exist. Then finite being, right, cannot even be restricted by its what was the other one? The other option. By itself. So it cannot be restricted by itself because it's its opposite or it's its negation. The same way that darkness cannot come from light because darkness is the negation of light or is the opposite of light. So you literally have made my premise easier by me saying that, okay, finite being exists and I said at first that finite being is either restricted by nothing or itself. But you said that I can't say nothing because nothing doesn't exist. Whatever. Now, finite being is only restricted by itself. But it
First of
cannot
all,
be.
look. When you say darkness is deprivation of light, that doesn't make sense either.
Oh my
Darkness
God.
does not have an ontological status at all. I reject that.
Oh my gosh. Darkness is just going to be the absence of light. Okay? That's it. Whether the absence is metaphysical or conceptual, me and you, we both don't care. We just want to get back with our days. Okay? So, darkness, absence of light. I just brought the example, Mike. I just used the example. Please understand what I'm saying. I just used the example. Even if you don't think darkness really exists, I'm just using an example. The fact is that the limitation of that finite being cannot come from that same finite being itself because it's its opposite. So the whole point is that it has to come from some positive principle that is really distinct from that finite being, which is its potency that limits the finite being's existence to the existence to being finite. That's the whole point. if you reject the other option that I gave, non-being, which is, in my opinion, ridiculous, but if you reject it, that's fine. I don't care. But the point is that it has to come from some principle that's really distinct from that finite being, which is what we call potency. You can call it X, Y, Z, Brigandi, it's whatever. We call it potency because it's some independent ontological principle that limits finite being. And we're going to say that every finite being is composed of this act and this potency. And that's the whole point.
Yeah, and we can just reject it and say nothing has potentiality. And that's it. Your argument's
Okay,
kaput.
so for you to reject something, you need a reason to reject it. So do you have any reason to reject my argument?
Yeah, because everything could be actualized.
Okay, you saying that everything could be actualized doesn't really disagree with me, Mike. So can you literally...
Yes, it does. It literally does. It directly disagrees, right? Just because
It
nothing
doesn't
has
disagree with
potentiality.
me. I think that everything could be actualized.
Okay, great. So then then nothing would have potentiality, right?
I think that everything could be actualized.